Good afternoon. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Christian Nyberg is a longtime environmental and community activist and the founder of the nonprofit Many Trees Project. Many Trees Project has graciously provided hundreds of tree and plant starts, which are available to attendees of the festival. They'll be given out after the presentation, and Christian will be able to tell you more about that, along with fascinating talk on oak harvests and sacred grove practices. Thank you for being here. Please welcome Christian Nyberg.
Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. I'll first start with a brief introduction about the Many Trees Project. We founded the group in 2020, and in the midst of the first days of the COVID-19 outbreak, a group of friends and I came together we felt like these are the fire times are beginning. We need to start coming together and thinking about the long term. And so what we did was we planted thousands of fruit and nut tree seeds and starts, and we decided to give our goal was to give away these trees for free, to plant the seeds of a communal future. And to date, we've given away over 8,000 fruit and nut trees for free to those who are willing to plant the trees in public locations across the Pacific Northwest. We've also planted numerous groves in public schools across Olympia, where students get involved with planting the trees and harvesting from the trees. This past year, we've led a number of different fundraisers, including a plant sale for the Palestinian International Solidarity Movement, where we raised $11,000 for a women's shelter in Nablus, Palestine. And our group is rooted in global solidarity efforts as well as indigenous sovereignty. Where we stand now is stolen ground, and the indigenous people who live here and have lived here for thousands of years have the collective memory of how to survive in these forests and in these hills, and it's been passed down for generations. This knowledge is in all of our lineages across Turtle Island and also from Europe, Africa, all across the world. Our ancestors lived through tremendously difficult times and have the knowledge for survival. And I think it's ludicrous for us to not look back to our lineages for the seeds of survival. And so for this talk, I'm going to be speaking about 3 different examples of collective oak harvests in Europe and in Turtle Island, which is now California. And first, I'd like to set a little bit of context. So I think, as many of us know, capitalism has completely failed. Not as an abstract theory, but as a system of survival. The food system is crumbling here in the United States, and we're just seeing the first steps of that. The forests are burning and the groundwater is vanishing. In our lifetime, lakes are disappearing, and we can actually see that. The market cannot offer resilience. It can only offer us debt. But people have chosen different paths in the past, and we can choose a different path. There are options. Across time, communities have built systems of collective subsistence, land stewardship, ritualized subsistence, and reciprocal governance. These systems often took root beneath oaks, a tree of nourishment, law, and kinship. And so in the capitalist system, commons, so in the capitalist system, we've lost an understanding of what is of communal ownership. We have a very recent system of organizing ownership. Raise your hand if you've heard of the concept of the commons. Have you heard of the concept of the commons? Okay. So in all across the world, people have collectively managed land, not through individual right or deed. This is a really new concept, very, very, very new, of ownership through deed or through paper. The capitalist system, this form of ownership offers no solutions. And here in Washington, we live in a legacy of one of the a really magical tree, the Gary oak, Quercus garryana. It's our only native oak species, and across this region, the region was dotted with oak savannas from the San Juan Islands to southern Vancouver and into the Columbia River Basin. These landscapes were tended by indigenous people for thousands of years through burning and gathering. But the climate crisis threatens this tree. Over the next 50 to 100 years, Gary oaks will likely shift north and uphill. So without our intervention, these trees could vanish from the landscape, and it already are vanishing dramatically. And so we need to form a system of collective ownership in order to be able to protect these trees. So I'm going to now dive into different systems of collective ownership and tending across the world, which could help us protect this sacred tree and build a path towards survival. So the first example I'm going to be looking at is the Caucasus. And in Georgia and Armenia, communities have long relied on oak forests for acorns, livestock feed, and fermented drinks. But this use was governed not through law, but through ritual, taboo, and community restraint. According to several different sources that I was looking at, these systems used rotational practices where certain trees or areas were intentionally left untouched, and ritual and social taboo enforced the protection of these trees. Oral taboos passed through generations, story and custom, demanded that no oak tree in the Caucasus be no branch breaking or breaking branches to collect the oaks, and that great care had to be used. And this was shared through story and through ceremony and collective harvests. And no harvest could be done without blessing of the town elder. Communal ceremonies marked the harvest of mast years. Elders blessed trees before the harvest with prayers and offerings of bread and wine and honey. Songs were sung in oak groves during this harvest season, and children were taught the dishonoring a tree would bring, not being careful with oak trees would bring dishonor to their family for generations to come, and would lead towards their family not being able to survive. Taboos were also enforced. The protection of these trees were also enforced through social and spiritual consequence. Villagers believed over-harvesting could bring misfortune and bad luck, and it would also be often cosmologically, there would be cosmological repercussions. And so acorns were gathered by hand and stick, and drying acorns was done communally and in large ceremonies at every few years. It wasn't every year that there was these big harvests, but in the Caucasus, this was one of the main sources of food in pre-Christian Caucasus, and life was based around these acorns. And the different villages set out to harvest collectively rather than individual families. These trees were not owned by any individual family or business. They were owned by the collective village together. And so now I'm going to look at Central Europe and medieval pannage system. And so in Germany, Hungary, and other countries in Central Europe, there was a system known as pannage. And it was a rite established through medieval struggle and pre-Christian struggle for common people to release their pigs into oak groves, for the pigs to eat the acorns, and the humans would be eating the acorns through the pigs. Instead of processing the acorns directly, people would be, the pigs would eat the acorns, and that's how they did in these practices. And villagers, at the beginning of each season, villagers would hold seasonal meetings under oaks to decide who could harvest and when, and how many pigs based on for each family. And these were the trees were set aside for certain families, and other trees were divvied up for other families based on need and not on ownership. Customary law, not state enforcement, governed the access to these trees. Ritual acts like striking oak branches with a staff marked the lawful start of the mast season. And this was done by elders and also done by village leaders. Breaking rules of pannage led to communal sanctions and also socially reinforced othering of people who harvested too much, and public shaming. So these are some different roles that people had. Swineherders played central roles. They released and monitored pigs into these oak groves, and also they made sure that the baby oak trees were not killed in the process of the pannage of the pigs eating the acorns. And in Germany and Hungary, bread and salt were offered to these large sacred trees as a form of an offering, and this allowed the beginning of the oak gathering season. And it was largely bread and salt were forms of ritual. And oaks were not acorns were not generally consumed on their own. They were consumed through the pigs. And the last system of collective governance that I'm going to look at is the California harvest system of indigenous acorn cultivation. So among the Miwok, Ohlone, Maidu, and Yukuts, and other tribes, oak was the central form of subsistence for these tribes. And not just as a food source, but as a relative. And as described in many different books, families tended specific trees for generations. You can go to California today, and through knowledge, different families still tend certain large trees. Some of these trees that exist in California, some of these oak trees are 500 years old, and the lineage of tending towards these specific trees still exists today. So this is a completely intact culture of communal subsistence. And some trees in California, and what's now called California, were left untouched, and no one harvested from them. And this allowed for the replenishment of the new growth of new trees to come up through the forests. Acorns were knocked gently from branches with long poles, with long wooden poles, and gathered in baskets. The processing of these acorns, in California, they used rivers in the fall to leach the acorns in order to get the tannins out. And there are also they grinded in the acorns in large grinding holes, which you can still see today. Some of the oldest archaeological remnants of this period are still, you can still go and see them, where there's little circles in bedrock where people have been grinding for the last probably 5,000 years. And you can still see those spots in California today. A lot of these acorns were put into pemmican or mush or cakes and stored for meal throughout the season. Women led the process of cooking. Elders ensured respectful practices and transmitted oral knowledge, and young people were integrated in the harvesting, the more difficult tasks, physical activities. And redistribution was a key aspect of this form of collective harvest. And the excess was shared amongst tribal members, and it was seen as a taboo to overly hoard acorns and acorn flour, and it was extremely important to share, and it was punishable by a spiritual law to hoard acorn flour. These rituals also demanded that there was cultural burning through ceremony to make sure that the process of harvesting was easier, and protect the community from bugs and insects and ticks and stuff like that, and through their harvesting. And so we, as the Many Trees Project, all of these different systems have influenced us in our understanding of the world and has pushed us towards trying to reclaim collectivism in the way that we sustain ourselves. So at this event, we are giving away hundreds of fruit and nut trees, and we've lined them at the entrance. And we're not doing this. All of the trees are free and plants are free. We're doing this to try and revive these systems of collective subsistence. But the caveat with us giving all of these plants away for free is that you have to share the bounty of these trees with others outside of your kinship networks, outside of your family, friends, or immediate circles. The form of the way that we're living right now is completely unsustainable, and we're trying to form a new way of subsistence. Those that take the trees have to share, and some ways you can do this is by planting the trees in public, to start creating new sacred groves, public parks, guerrilla planting behind Target, or like on bike trails. That's another place where we've been planting lots of oaks and chestnuts, abandoned railroad lines, places where people aren't going. And we encourage you to take as many trees or plants as you can and start the sharing. So just in conclusion, I'm going to talk a little bit about like the philosophy behind our project and some of the huge fires and storms that are coming our way, which push us to do this project. None of us are paid in the Many Trees Project. We don't make any money, and we all have careers outside of this work. So as the climate crisis accelerates, we're told by billionaires and states and companies that we're given all of these false solutions for survival, like green cars or carbon offset credits, or all of these strange and these projects that will not lead us towards a sustainable life. They are offering us, they're trying to commodify our future and our survival. And instead of this system of solar panels and greenwashing, we are trying to build a subsistence model of collective harvesting and collective ownership, where we can survive outside of the capitalist system. And another core root of why we're here today is we think that a paganism that is not rooted in a form of collective subsistence is just a shadow of paganism. All forms of paganism or collective spirituality throughout all of human history have been rooted in subsistence, have been rooted in communities recreating themselves. And we think that if we hope to survive as a community, if we hope to survive as just as a species, we must start to build systems of collective subsistence, of collective harvest, of collective ceremony that will allow us to survive. And at the base of that is reciprocity and sharing. And we don't hold all the answers, but we are just people who are trying to start walking this path. And so the Gary Oaks waits quietly in the dry hills and islands of Washington, and it's an ancient and patient tree, and it's endangered. Its range is shrinking. Its seedlings fail to thrive without fire, without planting, without memory. It may vanish from our future, but we can choose something else. Let us revive the rituals. Let us rebuild the commons. Let us tend again to the tree that fed our ancestors, not only with acorns, but with rhythm, governance, and grace. Let us gather once more under the oaks, not as owners, but as kin. Thanks. And do we have any questions or thoughts or... I came in a little bit early. Yeah.
I've been doing some guerrilla foraging in Seattle for some years, and with some of the species like figs, berries, chestnuts, others that maybe grow over sidewalks. There's a particularly bountiful fig tree that I know that creates a slippery, gooey mess on the sidewalk, and these homeowners who have let that foreclosed property want to like really limit up really harshly, or even get an arborist in to cut that so that they have a clean sidewalk. So on the theme of building the refugia of commons in kind of bounded municipalities with these old English kind of linearities of yards and sidewalks, fences. So you've been doing this project for a handful of years. I'd imagine in the next 5 or dozen years, as some of your plantings become mature and bearing fruit, I could foresee like some interesting conversations happening with either municipalities or adjacent property owners who would never really appreciate such freedom and kind of changing these colonial landscape factor spaces of even messages with fruits
Mm-hmm.
rotting on the ground. Always kind of thing. But yeah, I guess the question I have is, are you have you already heard of any situation or conversations happening with your plantings around different municipalities, or are you thinking ahead of like how to hold like festivals or things to create that factor?
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have run into that already. And even in Olympia, there's a big fig tree that has existed for generations in the community, and people have harvested from this fig tree whenever they like. It's in a public right-of-way. It's huge. It's massive. But a new family just bought the property, bought the title, and they built this giant fence around the tree, and are like doing everything they can to try and stop people from taking their figs. And yeah, we have thought about this a lot. And one thing that we have done is we've made a large chestnut festival in Olympia in 2023, where we gathered the community and brought people in outside of our small circles of radical politics or paganism, and brought people in to share the bounty of these giant chestnut trees that we have in Olympia. Some of the largest American chestnut tree in the world is in Olympia. And it's in a cemetery in Tumwater. And the American chestnut tree is pretty much extinct in its natural habitat on the East Coast, but it's because of our climate in the Pacific Northwest, it doesn't affect the diseased chestnut blight doesn't affect the tree in Olympia. But anyways, yes, I think that an answer to your question is what we're trying to do is work on actually organizing community to be involved in the collective harvesting practices. Without organization, none of the things that the examples I talked about were individuals going out and picking cherries and figs on their own. People were doing it together. And there were systems of collective harvests. It wasn't individuals. Individualism is a very new and poisonous ideology. And so what I'm going to pass around a little sign-up sheet. We're going to be, we are in the process of organizing an acorn harvest camp in the Olympia area. And I don't know if I effectively communicated this, but when acorns are harvested, it doesn't make sense to do it on your own. There are so many different steps that are needed in the harvesting of acorns that it's really inefficient to do on your own. So there are roles for every part of the community. And so we're planning on holding an acorn harvest camp where everyone would come together in a park or at someone's land in the fall this year and work on those skills, the foundation of these skills together. And I'm just going to pass that around right now. Yeah, so that's one way that we hope to start that. Okay, I'm passing around. Any other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Disease mostly, and the likelihood of disease, and deforestation from continued development, rather than the actual heat and lack of water. So yeah, totally right. Doug firs and western red cedars and big leaf maples are going to disappear, are already disappearing. And we are also offering in the entryway over here a whole bunch of California live oaks, which are robust. We probably have like 200 or 300. And these are trees that are even more drought tolerant than Gary oaks and provide a huge amount of food to the community. And so we are interested in migrating some of these trees from California and even from further south, a little bit north, to prepare for climate collapse. Because these trees take a long time to migrate, thousands of years, if they're done without human intervention. And so we think that we want to have a part in that process. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes. Yeah. So the trees that we're giving out, you will, since in the Pacific Northwest, if you live around here, it is a desert in the summer, pretty much. There's like almost no rain at all. So you will need to water the trees when you plant them all summer long, maybe once a week. And, or plant them in an area that is moist throughout the summer. So chestnuts don't like to be really wet. And that is something to keep in mind. So real swampy areas, I wouldn't do that. But in terms of pH, it doesn't matter as much. Yes, that's the thoughts on that. But the main thing is watering them. It's got to have water, and they're pretty hardy trees. Any other thoughts or questions on? Yeah.
I'm just curious if you have any experience of or thoughts about doing this stuff in, like, outside of dense population settlements in the matrix of industrial forest land and, like, quasi-public lands like state forests
Yeah.
where it's okay to do hiking, but because that feels like a huge, literal landscape of opportunities, but also it's like a very different set of considerations.
Absolutely. That is not, it's definitely something we've considered for sure. But in terms of our capacity as a group, no, probably not in the near term, but for sure, we've been interested in, we have been helping friends plant large groves, fruit groves, nut groves on land that they own or in land near cities. But not as much of that now, and I think that that's an excellent idea, though, and I hope people take some of these trees and do that. Any other? Yeah. Absolutely. It'd be much easier to keep it water and moist for sure. With the oaks, I would plant them now in the summer because they have, especially the Gary oaks, they form a really deep taproot, and that's what they want to do. That's what they'll start doing all summer. And so you really should. They grow so slowly in a pot; they won't grow at all, really. So for those Gary oaks and California live oaks, I would do that. Yeah.
Okay, so two questions then. Gary Oaks, how did they, like, again, soil questions in terms of, like, do they do okay with, like, really clayey soil, for example? Because, I would love to chat with you more maybe after
Yeah.
about specific locations and thoughts I have. But also, in terms of urban stuff, have you messed around at all with the, like, Tuscan chestnut cultivation method where the, like, relatively dense rows of, like, relatively closely spaced trees that get topped? I was just the communal harvest and resilience.
Yep.
Because I know that there's entire peasant communities that were basically like, oh, we can't govern these people because they still have their chestnut groves
Yeah.
in, like, incredibly dense, compact areas.
Yeah. And also from looking into those groves specifically, you could also like build houses for generations by these, with the beams of those. I can talk later about the specifics of the soil. Yeah. Could you say that a little bit louder? Absolutely. So specifically with our group, with this camp that we're planning, we will be planting a lot of trees, Gary oak trees specifically, in order for us to do this camp and for it to feel all right. And also be fundraising for Indigenous sovereignty groups while we're doing this camp as well too. Because I think any collective harvest efforts on Turtle Island by white people, you have to do that, or else it's completely not, it's not a land-based practice if you're not doing that while you're doing these practices. It's completely out of touch with what's going on with, yeah. So I think materially that's what we're, in terms of offering, that is what we're focused on, is specifically giving back to Indigenous sovereignty projects or land back projects. And then also we have our own personal ways of giving back with flowers and specific offerings to specific trees, particularly this, the world's oldest American chestnut. That's a tree that we often, like every year we give flowers to and offerings to, just because it's such a special tree. And we also take a lot of little babies from it because it's one of the few places where you can get the genetics from this really ancient tree, is this tree in Tumwater. Any other thoughts or questions? One thing I wanted to mention on the medicinal plants that we're offering hundreds of different medicinal plants, not varieties, but hundreds of medicinal plant starts. And the Canoe Journey Herbalists is a great organization where they are they work specifically with the with tribes in the area to bring herbs to them in lots of different sovereignty events. So we're offering these herbs to you, and you can grow them on your land. And we encourage you to donate the herbs once they're dried and ready to go to organizations like this, or other organizations that are giving back in some way, or just friends. Yeah. Canoe Journey Herbalists. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah. So after this talk is done, you can at any time, all of the trees are labeled and plants are labeled. Some of them, we just had this really huge plant sale in Olympia, and a lot of the plants and trees are labeled with little sticks on there. So if you don't see a sign with cardboard on it and marker, then you can look at the little sticks. And so after this event, you can go and put them in your truck, drive them away. Yeah. Take as many as you want. Don't feel bad about taking them, because so they are when you're walking to your car, you'll see them on both sides of the road, right on the walkway. You won't miss them. Absolutely. Yeah. Just before yeah. I don't know where the gate is, but yeah. So please, the other thing that you can help us out with is please tell your friends who are here to come and take the trees and plants, because it's a lot of work to haul them all over the place. And it would be good if you all took them instead of us hauling them back. Any other thoughts or questions on Check the Time? Thanks, everybody.